Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Hester. I'm a member of NOAA, and we're glad you're here, members of NOAA and friends and co-laborers with us in the struggle for justice, equality, and freedom. We welcome you to Nashville Organized for Action and Hope's annual public meeting. We welcome you on behalf of NOAA's 60 labor unions, congregations, and community organizations in the name of our president, Reverend Edward Thompson, who could not be with us this afternoon as he and his family celebrate the life and death of his older brother, Charles Thompson. Nevertheless, he is with us in spirit as we are called together this afternoon by what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. described as the fierce urgency of now. This fierce urgency that cannot wait and will not wait called to us in the many issues that confront us. If not now, when? If not us, who? If not here, where? We are thankful you are here with us. We will open our meeting this afternoon with prayers from Reverend Kane, Reverend Hammonds, Sabina Mohadeen, and Rabbis Laurie and Philip Rice. And again, we're glad you're here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the honor of being here. I'm with the Greater Nashville Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Please join me in prayer. Spirit of love, Spirit of life, Spirit of peace, Spirit of justice, be with us now, be with us in the urgency of now. Help us find our voices, help us raise our voices, and help those who sit in the halls of power to hear our voices. Give us strength for the journey. Give us health for the journey. Keep us safe. Lift us up though we be weary. Give us courage for the battles ahead. Even though it may seem endless and the odds seem overwhelming, remind us that when we walk with love, stand with life, come with peace, and seek justice, we will never be alone, and we can do all things. Amen.
Greetings from St. John African Methodist Episcopal Church. Pray with me to that who you consider holy and loving. Almighty, we thank you for entrusting us to assume the baton to continue your kingdom agenda. We recognize this urgent calling for such a time as this when it is most needed. Grant us your favor for the facing of these fierce days. We recognize that with your power, you have equipped us with an unction in our spirits to bring about necessary change through love, justice, equity, equality, mercy, grace, humility, and righteous indignation. When we have failed to do these, forgive us and renew the fire in us to fight on until the end. It is in your name, the name that is holy among us, the name that we recognize with power and authority, that name that we ask it all. Amen. Ashe. So be it. It is done.
Assalamu alaikum. May God's peace and mercy be upon you all. I'm speaking on behalf of the American Muslim Advisory Council. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of God, the infinitely compassionate, the infinitely merciful. God says in the Quran in chapter 4, O you who believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to God, even as against yourselves or your parents or your kin, and whether it be against rich or poor, for God can protect both. Follow not the lusts of your heart, lest you swerve. And if you distort justice or decline to do justice, verily God is well acquainted with all that you do. Every step we take towards justice will come with challenges. There will be the naysayers, those who question whether this will work or whether we have the money to implement our plan, or whether it is even worth the effort. They will use their money or influence to get their way. Oh, my Lord, strengthen us with the resolve to do what is right, despite these naysayers, to stand strong against those who would try to deny others justice. Oh, my Lord, we know you are by your servants' side, protecting them and guiding them when they are fighting for justice. Stand by our side and give us the courage and strength to stand up for justice right now. Amen.
When we seek justice, we seek what we call in Judaism or in Hebrew, shalom or shlemut. We seek wholeness for all people. So I take the words of the amazing women who have just spoken and shared with us before me, and I offer this chant, Oseh shalom b'marmav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol am. May God, who grants wholeness and peace to us, grant wholeness, peace, equity, justice to all people. Oseh shalom b'marmav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. Amen.
Good afternoon, my sisters and brothers. Thank you so much to our faith leaders for opening our meeting so beautifully. The joining of our faith traditions is one of the primary pillars of Noah's strength. Though we may express our commitment to social justice with the words and the tenets of our separate faith, in Noah's work, we can all see our faith values living in action. The Jewish tradition promotes tikkun olam, repairing the world, even though we may not in our own lifetimes complete that work. Followers of Islam believe it is their duty to stand witness to justice, fairness, and equality, not just in words, but in practice. And Christians remember the injunction to love, not just with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. We are all unchanging in our commitment to the core value of the Golden Rule, a unilateral moral commitment to the well-being of others without the expectation of anything in return. But like many events in 2020, we are here today virtually. We are adapting to our current times, and we hope that this meeting format will bring you the information and the energy similar to those that Noah has in person. We know we have lived a very difficult year for our city between storms, tornadoes, COVID-19, economic uncertainty, and a contentious election. There have been many struggles. Throughout all of this, Noah has continued to meet these events with a determination to work on issues that are most pressing for our city, that are urgent now: affordable housing, criminal justice, education, and economic equity and jobs.
We will be asking questions to city officials today about ways that we can work together to create a city that works for all of us. Our theme today comes from a speech that was given when our country was also facing a difficult and fractured time. Noah leaders believe that we are called to act with the fierce urgency of now. We hope you'll keep that in mind as we're together today. How can I personally act upon the fierce urgency of now? Our agenda today will be in the chat box. It may already be there. If you want to pull it up on your computer, and I'll walk you through it as well. Please know that we are recording this meeting for our own internal quality purposes. Portions, however, may be made available for later viewing. We've asked our panelists to adhere to a few ground rules for the duration of the meeting. Those requests include turning off microphones and remaining on mute when not speaking, honoring the time limits for responding to questions. Panelists were all informed of Noah's reputation for honoring everyone's time. You will be able to open and receive information in the chat box. But for today, participants can only send chat messages to our hosts and co-hosts. Chat amongst participants is disabled. We thank our panelists once again for accepting these parameters. During the question period, our timekeeper, Regina Davis, will signal time by ringing a bell once when 1 minute remains, twice at 30 seconds, and three times to indicate that time is up. We will have first a virtual roll call of NOAA member organizations that are participating in today's event from across the city.
Peace be with you. I'm the Reverend Kira Austin Young, representing St. Anne's Episcopal Church, and as of October 15th, we have 65 parishioners who have pledged to vote in this year's election.
Hi, this is Darlene Royal with New Covenant Christian Church. Proud to be a member of this virtual public meeting. New Covenant is totally committed to voting in the November 3rd election. See you at the polls.
St. John AME Church's physical structure is gone, but we are still standing and present at NOAA's public meeting, and we are committed to 100% voter participation.
I am Cheryl Major, and I am representing the Metropolitan Interdenominational Church. We had a team who contacted the members of our church, and I'm very excited to report that 100% of the members who were reached have plans to vote, and 100% of the members we reached have completed the 2020 census. As of October 10th, today, we also have commitment from 10 members of our church to participate in the virtual meeting on October 23rd. And because the registration is still open, we hope that we have additional people that will be able to attend.
Laura Revelinsky, I'm a member of Belmont United Methodist Church, announcing that we are present for NOAA's annual public meeting, and we are all in with our Belmont Votes campaign.
Hey, I'm Brian Loschel with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, Local 456 here in Nashville. Happy to be a part of the meeting and happy to report that we are over 100 households strong committed to get out to vote.
Kitty Calhoun from West End Synagogue, a proud member of NOAA and represented at this meeting today by a great group of people who are excited to hear what the mayor and other guests have to say.
Hi, we're Ray and Phyllis Sells. We're active at West End United Methodist Church.
Hello, my name is Lynn Hoy.
My name is Hannah Fletcher Page.
And we are very proud that West End United Methodist Church is a member of NOAA.
And we are proud to be represented at the NOAA public meeting.
And we commit to voting in this year's election.
We're Open Table Nashville, and we are committed to having 100% of our staff vote in the upcoming election.
Hey, this is Lindsay from Open Table. One of our board members who has a felony is also committed, because he can't vote, to taking some of our people to the polls the day of the election.
I'm Reverend Harold Love Jr. at Lee Chapel AME Church. Along with my 250 registered voters at Lee Chapel, we are committed at this public meeting to go out and make a difference.
Hello. I am Angela Pulsreed, the interim pastor of historic Spruce Street Missionary Baptist Church. We are present and accounted for at NOAA's public meeting today. And guess what? Spruce Street is ready to get in good trouble and vote.
This is Reverend Dr. W. Anthony Sinkfield of Payne Chapel AME Church, and we are here at NOAA's fierce urgency of now gathering accounted for. All 140 households of Payne Chapel are registered and voting early. We are in the house.
Good afternoon. I'm a proud member of Service Employees International Union SCIU Local 205. We represent thousands of workers across the city of Nashville. We have worked hard and have made over 10,000 phone calls during this election cycle. When we vote, we win.
I'm Nancy Collowit, proud to announce that NOAA member Greater Nashville Unitarian Universalist Congregation is in the house. At least 96% of us are committed voters.
I am Nolan Huizinga. I'm one of the pastors here at Second Presbyterian Church in Nashville. We have in our faith community about 250 people who have committed to voting this election cycle. We encourage everyone to vote with wisdom and compassion and to vote for economic and racial justice. We have a number of our folks here on the call today, and we stand with you and with Nashville.
I'm Liza Ramage from Edge Hill United Methodist Church, where everyone has a place at the table. We're a proud NOAA member and happy to say that over 99% of our members have pledged to vote in this election.
I am president of the Napier-Luby Bar Association. I'm Robin Kimbrell Hayes, and I'm the NOAA liaison for the Napier-Luby Bar Association. We're at the historic Ted Rose Golf Course. Napier-Luby plans to vote 100.
Hello, from the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. We're trying to reach new heights with voter engagement. Tonight we have over 200, or about 50% of our congregation pledged to vote, and we have 60 people with us here tonight. Thanks, First UU of Nashville.
I'm Erwin Bennick. We're all from the Temple, proud members of NOAA, and we are 100% voting!
Kairos Ebenezer AME Church, a proud member of NOAA, is present for the public meeting, and we are committed to voting in this year's election.
I'm Philip Rice. They call me Rabbi Flip of Congregation Micah. We are present at this meeting, and we're going to be voting in large numbers.
We're here today as the members of the Central Labor Council of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. We're 40 affiliates strong. And we're glad to say that we're in the house for Nashville Organizing for Action and Hope.
Christ Church Cathedral is proud to be a part of NOAA.
Hi, Martha Carroll with friends from Eastwood Christian Church. From Katie Madole, a first-time voter, to Jerry Ordway, voting for 65 years, and many others, we vote.
I don't know about y'all, that video roll call makes me wish I was in person getting to see all of your faces. So that was fantastic. We know that we have other member organizations that are on today that just didn't get their video sent in time, but we appreciate those that did. We will next have the Education Task Force. We have a video that they will be presenting to us. And following that, we will have questions by Billy Sanders, one of our task force members, to Executive Officer for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion of Metro Nashville Schools, Ashford Hughes, as well as a question for School Board Chair, Christian Buggs. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Zelensky, and I'm the chair of NOAA's State Funding Committee of the Education Task Force. We at NOAA believe it is time to challenge our state representatives to change the way that the state of Tennessee funds public education, the Basic Education Plan, known as the BEP. For example, the BEP includes no funding for professional development for our teachers, an essential ingredient of eradicating barriers to achievement in our schools. The BEP funding level for social workers, psychologists, counselors, nurses, and other professionals is so inadequate to any school district, whether it is in a rural area dealing with poverty and chronic absenteeism, or whether it is located in an urban, multicultural center dealing with systems of racial injustice. School districts statewide are forced to fund costs that are mandated by state law, but are not funded through the BEP, forcing school districts to either obey the law or to follow the needs of their students. And finally, the BEP completely fails to address digital learning and digital inequality, a problem made so clear by the pandemic that there should not even be serious dispute.
The school to prison pipeline is alive and well here in Nashville. MNPS has acknowledged this and has worked internally as well as collaboratively with NOAA to address these issues. There have been some victories, such as funding requests submitted in MNPS budgets for the last 2 years to combat this problem. And there have been some setbacks, such as only 1 year of actual funding of those requests. We still have work to do, and as the late great Congressman John Lewis said, never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble. For this reason, the NOAA Education Task Force continues to work toward the implementation of safe spaces and social emotional supports in all our schools. These practices have been proven to work in disrupting the school to prison pipeline. This summer, we hosted board candidate public meetings where all candidates committed to work with this task force on these issues. We also created a subcommittee to address gaps in the way race and racism are covered in the curriculum, to increase access to gifted and talented programs for Black and brown students, and to work to close the racialized achievement gap. A school environment that provides physical and emotional safety for every student is one that fosters academic success for all students.
Mr. Hughes, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I understand that Dr. Battle had a prior commitment and was unable to join us today and had asked you to come and represent her. At the October 20 school board retreat, the school board members affirmed their commitment to prioritize robust funding for social emotional learning. We provided you a question ahead of time to discuss with Dr. Battle. I was hoping that that question would be on the screen, but I don't see it on the screen because it's long and I wanted our attendees to be able to see it, but I will read it. Is it coming up? Well, I don't, oh, there it is, okay. All right. Okay, we provided you this question ahead of time so you would have an opportunity to discuss it with Dr. Battle. Our yes or no question to Dr. Battle is, will she meet with the NOAA Education Task Force to develop the plan and implementation strategies for reducing the racial disparities in school discipline by funding the designated line items from the 2020 social emotional learning budget in the upcoming 2021 budget, by implementing ongoing training for all district administrators, principals, teachers, and staff regarding restorative approaches to discipline and social emotional learning, and by returning the student handbook to previous less punitive language regarding restorative approaches to discipline. Please respond yes or no, then you will have 1.5 minutes to elaborate on behalf of Dr. Battle.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders, for this opportunity to come and be with you all this afternoon. On behalf of Dr. Battle, yes, we look forward to working with NOAA to address the issues as spoken, as well as alongside of our school board to make certain that we are meeting the needs of our community and our students moving forward.
Thank you for your response. Now, Chairman Buggs.
Yes, I do.
I have a similar question for you. From your position as chair of the Metro Nashville Public School Board, we would like your response to the questions we've just presented to the administration. Again, our yes or no question is, will you meet with us to craft policy around funding the designated line items for the 2020 social emotional learning budget in the upcoming 2021 budget, implementing ongoing training for all district administrators, principals, teachers, and staff regarding restorative approaches to discipline and social emotional learning, and regarding returning the student handbook and to previous less punitive language regarding restorative approaches to discipline. Please respond yes or no, then you will have 1.5 minutes to elaborate.
Yes. The Metro Nashville Public Schools Board of Education is a governing body with 3 responsibilities. We oversee and evaluate a director of schools, update and develop policies, and ratify/advocate for a budget that seeks to meet the needs of all of our 80,000 plus diverse learners. I am so excited and in awe of this awesome responsibility I have as board chair this year, and I look to use our committee structure more effectively to meet these needs, like advocating for the funding, implementing the policies, and then returning our student handbook to less punitive measures. So 1, I will ask our advocacy chair, Mrs. Emily Booth Masters, to work more closely to elevate concerns. I will then ask our governance chair, Mrs. Virginia Pupo Walker, to oversee governance and our governance structure and modeling so that we update policies appropriately. And then lastly, I will ask our budget chair, Mrs. Frida Player Peters, to work closely with city leaders to be sure that our resource needs are met. I appreciate all the work you all have done with us so far. I continue to work with Mr. Ashford Hughes to make sure our equity agenda, our equity policies, and our equity resolution will be ratified and support the needs of these students that have been marginalized for so long.
Thank you so much for your response. The NOAA Education Committee looks forward to working with both the administration and the school board to do what is best for our students.
Thank you.
Mr. Hughes, did you want to take a minute and add on to your comments since you said yes on behalf of Dr. Battle?
Absolutely. I wanted to defer to our board chair, but first, before I began to speak, but on behalf of Dr. Battle and MNPS, I think in the midst of this generational pandemic, our focus still remains clear that we are student-centered focus. When we look at the things that we need to do, we are committed to providing a high-quality education for all children, regardless of race, zip code, ability, or country of origin. We will be short-term and long-term focused on the social, emotional learning of our students, as well as our staff in those buildings. We are currently and will be focused on equity to make certain that we mitigate any of the long-term learning losses in the midst of this pandemic. And importantly, we will be also focused on the compensation for all of our employees, which is vital to help these schools moving forward. We will continue to do this in partnership with our school board members, as well as, most importantly, our new board chair, Mrs. Buggs. Over the time, for us to be able to do this work, we're going to need resources. That is meaning that more resources coming from the state to our city, and our city prioritizing our schools with those resources moving forward is going to be extremely vital. We thank the mayor's office for making contributions and making investments in our city around the learning of technology for our students. We also thank our Metro Council for making the hard decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Regina, for the bell so we can keep us all on time. Next, we will learn about the work of the Affordable Housing and Criminal Justice Task Forces. They will both have a video that will show back to back. After those videos, the Affordable Housing Task Force chairs, Monica Rainey and Susie Reese, will pose questions to Mayor John Cooper, as well as criminal justice members Amanda Lucas and Joe Engel. For a variety of different reasons, sharing these videos over Zoom may create a lag effect between the audio and the video. We acknowledge that, and we apologize and just pray for everyone's grace and good wishes as we continue to use technology to the best of our ability. The full videos after today's event, though, the full videos will be available to view on noaatn.org, so you can go back and look at those as well. Thank you.
The homes we live in or don't live in shape our lives, our health, and our abilities to succeed. Communities can thrive when families don't have to relocate often in search of a place they can afford. Frequent relocation is hardest on kids in school who have to make new friends and get settled in a new school. If more Nashvillians had stable and affordable homes, our city would be stronger, our people healthier, and our children better prepared to learn. The cost of living has been skyrocketing in Nashville, but wages have remained stuck. Now, to rent to afford to rent a median priced apartment in Nashville, you need to make $22 an hour. To buy the median priced home, you need to earn $33 an hour.
The question we need to ask ourselves is, what kind of city do we want? Don't we want people who work in our schools, our hotels, our restaurants, and grocery stores to also be able to live in Nashville? To preserve the city we love, we need to act now. It will take each of us to mobilize and let our political leaders know that we want strong housing policies, effective collaborations, and dedicated funding to improve this city. There's no time to wait to create and preserve the affordable housing we need. Nashville can do this. We need to act now.
NOAA has and will continue to push the Metro government to invest more money in the Barnes Housing Trust Fund. Nonprofit groups receiving grants from the Barnes Fund leverage that money 5 times to build homes. A 2017 housing report stated that by 2025, Nashville will need 31,000 new affordable units. At our current production rate, it will take us 63 years to meet that need. We need more funding for housing now. Our state government can help. For over 30 years, the state dedicated a portion of the real estate transfer tax to help fund affordable housing across Tennessee. Years ago, this funding was redirected. If the state reallocated those funds back to affordable housing, it would help immensely. Let's remind our legislators that we need more funding for housing now.
In 2016, NOAA helped pass inclusionary zoning, which required developers asking for zoning variances to set aside 10% of their units for affordable housing. But our state legislature overturned our local law. We need the state to get out of the way of progress and respect the will of Nashville's voters.
These are some of the ways to tackle our housing shortage. Today, our top priority is the creation of a 10-year implementation and funding plan that provides opportunities for all Nashvillians to have stable, affordable homes. Please join NOAA in pressing our government leaders to implement proven solutions. We can do this if we work together.
The time to act is now.
My name is Jane Borm. I'm the co-chair of the Criminal Justice Task Force with NOAA, and I'm going to describe for you some of the progress that our Criminal Justice Task Force has made in the last year. We've made structural changes. First of all, we have 2 new chairs. I'm one of them. Sean Witzel, whom you'll hear in a few minutes, is another one. We also voted to pick 3 main issues that we would be focusing on. We call those our pillars. A is use of force, B, cash bail reform, and C, mental health diversion. That means trying to keep people out of jail. We're also actions this year. Abu Ali Abdur Rahman. He had a clemency ruling by Judge Monty Watkins, and that was overruled or undermined at the state level by the Secretary of State. So Mr. Rahman continues to be wrongfully placed on death row, and we're trying to have that execution that was scheduled by the state canceled on his behalf, and so the NOAA membership did approve that, and we're very proud of the fact that we stood behind Abu. On September 10th, we had a press conference in front of the Nashville Police Headquarters on Murfreesboro Road. We had a list of demands. You can see some of these demands here, the 4 demands, including the 8 can't wait policies that many cities across the country have asked their police departments to also fully implement. Then on September 17th, we had a webinar that was live on Zoom and Facebook. We had almost 100 viewers for that. We had special guests that talked about how police departments can be different and how we can reform them and change the whole concept of public safety for our communities with community input. And then on September 23rd, I myself and Dr. Teresa Smallwood, we were on a talk show on Channel 5's Online with Ben Hall and answered questions from viewers then at that time. And in the last year, we've also had 6 meetings with Mayor Cooper and his staff about selecting the new police chief, body and dash cams, and our COB relationship with the police department, which needs improving. And one of the other accomplishments we've had was our task force member, Amanda Lucas, was appointed by the mayor to the Policing Commission, which is working on helping select a new police chief. So we've had a busy year. We hope you'll come join us in the next year. Thank you.
I'm Sean Witzel of NOAA's Criminal Justice Task Force. The Criminal Justice Task Force has worked diligently to reimagine and influence the reshaping of public safety here in Nashville. We've had conversations, we've engaged the community, we've had discussions with decision makers, we've supported the Community Oversight Board. We've done a lot, but there's still so much for us to do. And we'll continue to do that work in the future through actions we deem necessary, public forums, community engagement, petitions, press conference, whatever it takes to make Nashville a safer and more equitable city for all of us.
As the nation faces a criminal justice reckoning, it's now more important than ever that NOAA receives support from the mayor, local representatives, and from the police department. We must implement changes that will address mental health, and we must create police policies that will eradicate racism in our city. We must make Nashville equitable and just for all people.
Good afternoon, Mayor Cooper. As a candidate for mayor, in your policy platform, you pledged to create a 10-year plan to preserve and create a meaningful number of affordable housing units at an appropriate price with measurable results. That was from your policy platform. We recognize that addressing issues related to the financial crisis, the tornadoes, the pandemic, and the property tax referendum are challenges that demand a significant attention. However, it is precisely because of the pandemic, which threatens an unprecedented number of Nashvillians with eviction and homelessness, that your administration must work with the fierce urgency of now to develop an affordable housing plan so it is in place as we emerge from the pandemic challenges.
Mayor Cooper, by January 31st, 2021, will you appoint an affordable housing task force made up of NOAA, experienced housing policy and finance experts, nonprofit and private housing developers, and housing advocates to create a 10-year funding and implementation plan within 6 months?
Well, thank you. I hope you all can hear me, and I look forward to when we can meet in person. And Susie and Monica, thank you so much for your leadership in this area. And thank you for the question. The short answer is yes. We're committed to coming up with a 10-year plan, and some of that work has already started in conjunction with the transportation plan that was announced last month, which I know many of you have reviewed and provided input on. Hannah Davis is helping to put together this task force, and we're planning to announce it in December. Fortunately, our policing commission work we expect to be done in November, so one big job a month. Now, for a moment, I'd like to spend some time on tornado and COVID relief and where we are after a tumultuous 2020, and add some context and update for the community. Through it all, 2020 has been a big year for housing in Nashville. And despite all the challenges, there is a lot to be proud of. For COVID-19 relief, over 40 partners have worked to distribute $23.3 million to households throughout Davidson County. The United Way has processed payments to support housing stability for 1,808 households. And unfortunately, that number is only going to be increasing. Hannah Davis in our office has worked with partners to stabilize housing for neighbors, first through the tornado and then the pandemic. And the United Way and dozens of nonprofits with their networks are distributing an additional $10 for rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. Now, this funding was strategically dispersed as the stimulus unemployment funding is coming to an end. So if I could go back, the answer is yes, but there is, and I know we're pressed for time, and I'd like to go on about it. This city is facing the potential of 67,000 evictions. And we've been able to hold off the evictions by working with the courts and utilizing CARES money and rent and mortgage and utility payments. And so there's a lot to do, and we're excited to work with you in getting it done.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. We're glad you said yes to our question.
Hello, Mayor Cooper. My name is Amanda Lucas, and I am a member of the NOAA Criminal Justice Task Force, as well as your Policing Policy Commission. Thank you for joining us here today and allowing us to offer what we believe is an exciting prospect for reimagining mental health crisis response in our city. One of our Criminal Justice Task Force's areas of concern has been the response of police to mental illness crisis calls coming through 911. Our research reveals that mid-sized cities like Nashville are where encounters between police and individuals experiencing a mental health crisis most frequently turn fatal. Many members of our community have experienced the MNPD response to mental health crises, and they have not been pleased. From Aurora, Colorado to Rochester, New York, we have witnessed officers take the lives of our country's most vulnerable citizens. We want to prevent that from happening here in Nashville. We have investigated various models of mental health crisis response from around the country and believe that the CAHOOTS program offers the best model for us to follow. CAHOOTS stands for Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets and has existed for over 30 years. In Oregon, where it currently operates, the CAHOOTS program saves an estimated average annually of $8 million on public safety and $14 million for ambulance and emergency room treatment. CAHOOTS works like this. If a call comes into 911 and it involves a mental health crisis, it is routed to the CAHOOTS line. A team of trained mental health professionals, including a medic, either a nurse or an EMT, and an experienced crisis counselor respond. They wear identification but are not in uniform, they are not armed, and they arrive in a white van with a dove of peace represented on the vehicle. They de-escalate the situation, assess the patient, and arrange for the appropriate level of care. They also provide transportation to mental health facilities should it be required. This is a humane, community-centered solution to mental health crisis, which seldom requires the involvement of police. How effective is this model? Last year, CAHOOTS fielded 24,000 mental health crisis calls, about 18% of all emergency calls. Only 250 out of that total required police backup, which represents only about 1% of calls. Recently, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon has introduced the CAHOOTS Act in the US Senate as part of national healthcare legislation, and a variety of cities are working on implementation, from Denver, Colorado to New York City. Organizations already exist in Nashville who are well integrated into the communities they serve. Nonprofits like Gideon's Army, the Mental Health Cooperative, and the National Association for the Mentally Ill, NAMI, to name just a few, have years of experience assisting individuals with mental health issues and connecting them with the services they need. Many in Nashville do not know that community members, case managers, and therapists are currently, as we speak, on call 24/7 to be available to assist with mental health crises. Providing them with the expanded resources to provide care to our most vulnerable citizens via CAHOOTS would free up police to focus on those responsibilities for which they are best trained and most qualified. MNPD officers have communicated clearly that transporting and supervising these patients in crisis takes officers away from other areas where they are needed. 18 months ago in Springfield, Oregon, the city adjacent to Eugene, police responded to a mental health crisis call. Unfortunately, the patient, who was unarmed, was killed by a police officer. As a result of that fatality, Springfield moved to a cahoots model, and it is highly unlikely that they will lose another citizen to excessive force. Mayor Cooper, we do not want to wait, as did Springfield, and have a person experiencing a mental health crisis in Nashville killed by an officer. We want to be a model for the rest of the nation in reimagining the task of providing assistance to our community members in crisis and bringing a compassionate, qualified, and successful model of community-led crisis response here to Nashville. Thank you so much for listening. And now Joe Engel will ask our question.
Will you, Mayor Cooper, meet with the NOAA Criminal Justice Task Force and other mental health focused community organizations to convene a task force by the end of the year that will work towards implementing the cahoots model of mental health crisis response in Nashville?
Well, thank you, Joe and Amanda and Jane and Sean. Yes, I'm excited to meet with the NOAA Criminal Justice Committee always. But let me say, I fully agree with the premise of the question that we need a better system that makes people with clinical training our first responders. But I currently don't think that we need a separate task force. The Policing Policy Commission is doing this exact work right now. One of the things I specifically asked them to do was to look at this and make a recommendation with the 41 members that are there about how we do respond with people with mental illness. And it will be a primary focus, one of the primary focuses of the new chief. But I'm so grateful to the leadership that Noah and Amanda Lucas has played in this. Nashville does cite or arrest 2,300 people with known mental illness. And our police get training in this area, and we have developed a great pre-arrest diversion option in the mental health co-op's crisis intervention system. And for people who've had the police have kind of taken into booking, the Sheriff's Hall's new 60-bed facility, I think, is a model, and it's a result of years of advocacy by many people on this call. Now that's all good, but we need to do better. And we want first responders to be mental health professionals whenever possible. Now there are a couple of models out there. One is in Memphis, the crisis intervention model. The other, of course, is the Cahoot model from Eugene, Oregon, where trained social workers and mental health professionals do respond to certain types of call. And that certainly sounds great. The Oregon model is paid for with money from their Medicaid expansion. And as all of you know, Tennessee does not have Medicaid expansion money. But we do need a new approach, but we have to be able to pay for it. So we need to build on what we have. Judge Blackburn, the head of the mental health court and chair of our community subcommittee, the Policing Commission, has told me that there is potential state funding for a dedicated CIT model, which would be great. But I'm eager to see the Policing Policies Commission's final recommendations, which are going to be due in just a few weeks. And that is something that I think will provide a great platform for all of us to move forward together on. Thank you very much for the question.
So Mayor Cooper, just let me clarify. As I understand your response, we ask a direct question because we spent months of research on this about implementing the Cahoots model in conjunction with other people, organizations concerned about mental health crisis response. And you're saying, well, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to defer to whatever the police commission recommends. Is that correct?
No, I'm saying that the police commission is actively studying this, and I expect for them to have a very informed opinion, one. And the second thing that I'm saying is we have to be able to pay for this. And Oregon has a source of money that Tennessee simply doesn't have. So I'm currently unable to pay for a Cahoots model. And I'm certainly unable to pay for it if the referendum were to have an election and be passed on it. So the work is worthy, of course, but we have to be able to pay for it. And right now, the source of money in Oregon, which is great, is simply not here. So that's my answer to your question, Joe. This is, of course, a priority for the next chief. And the policing commission work is going to reinforce that as a priority by the chief. But any program response has to require funding for it. And right now, we do not have the funding for the Cahoots program. I am sorry, and we would love to be able to do it, but we have to accept that as a reality. Thank you.
Well, if we provide a model that would include funding, would you be open to it?
Well, I'd be super excited if we can help find the money to serve our community better in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. Next, Deputy Chief Kay Lokey has been a part of the Metro Nashville Police Department since 1996. She has served in various capacities across multiple precincts. She currently serves as the Deputy Chief of the Police Force. She will be answering questions by Marcus Trotter-Lockett, a member of the Criminal Justice Task Force. Thank you.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. Hi, my name is Marcus Trotter-Lockett. I'm a proud alumnus of Metro Nashville Public Schools, UMFOG class of 2017, representative of the organization Safer Schools Nashville, an advocate for the needs of Metro school students, at least as I see it. In 2020, the lives of Nashville's youth have been defined by the unforeseen and unprecedented convergence of debilitating crises. This city's and the nation's confrontation with the tragic persistence of racial injustice and continued adjustment to life during the coronavirus pandemic have inspired activism and redress, but also laid bare the reality of inequality facing Nashville's public school students. Data-informed and community-centered solutions to these issues has been a central goal of NOAA's Criminal Justice Task Force, as well as dozens of other organizations, organizers, students, and citizens. The challenges Nashville's public school students face are daunting, now even more so as the pandemic enters its 9th month. Among these challenges is the school-to-prison pipeline that traps many of Nashville's most vulnerable students in a cycle that is nearly impossible to escape. The omnipresence of police officers in our middle and high schools, coupled with overly punitive disciplinary practices, are the primary gateways to this cycle. Challenges are multifaceted, but the solutions are quite straightforward. The case for removing school resource officers can be summed up in 3 key points. 1, there is clear evidence that the presence of police in school leads to students being criminalized for non-criminal behavior. These students are overwhelmingly Black, brown, and/or disabled. SROs, the second point, SROs are ineffective at preventing school shootings or deterring criminal activity. And 3, alternatives that center student well-being currently exist right here in Nashville, as well as in other cities across the country. These alternatives are demonstrated to keep students safe and in the classroom learning, obviously the most important activity at a school. To the first point, in Metro Nashville Public Schools, Black students are 3.1 times more likely than white students to be suspended, making up 58% of in-school suspensions, 65% of out-of-school suspensions, and almost 75% of expulsions. Minorities as a whole make up almost 90% of referrals to law enforcement, and disabled students make up a stunning 97% of referrals to law enforcement in Metro Nashville Public Schools, disabled students. Police officers should not be used to respond to common instances of classroom disruption and petty behavioral infractions. Instead, teachers and principals should be afforded the tools and personnel to deal with these issues in a way that centers the well-being of students first rather than doling out punishments. Now, to the second part, in 197 instances of gun violence at U.S. schools since 1999, student resource officers intervened successfully in only 3 instances, according to the Nonpartisan Congressional Research Service. That is a 1.5% success rate. Gun violence is a larger problem that must be swiftly dealt with, but police and schools have had no demonstrated effect at either stopping or preventing such tragedies. This is only an indicator of how school safety, as we currently see it, has become complicit in a school-to-prison pipeline that in some zip codes in this county is among the worst in the nation. This infrastructure for school safety is not only statistically unequal, but in the face of remote learning has failed to uplift or even provide basic resources for the mental well-being of its students during a time where they're more isolated, anxious, and mentally fatigued than in any other in recent history. In the recent summit of the Mayor's Youth Council, an event that brings together youth from all over Metro Nashville Public Schools, and I was proudly able to attend, The deficiency of Metro's resources for mental health and disparity in its punitive applications were central in students' demands for change and reimagining. Alternatives do exist, extending from the local success of Glencliff High School's peace team and implementing restorative discipline in the place of punitive practices. And schools have actually joined them in attempting to form their own peace teams too. To a laundry list of successful school districts across the country that recognized what school safety meant to them and reimagined it. Deputy Chief LOKEY, you specifically admitted at NOAA's Forum for Reimagining Public Safety that questions do exist over the effectiveness of SROs and that other cities have found success in reconceptualizing school safety in a way that we could learn from. So on the behalf of NOAA's Criminal Justice Task Force, my yes or no question would be, will you, Deputy Chief LOKEY, meet with the NOAA Criminal Justice Task Force to reimagine school safety, discuss the ineffectiveness of school resource officers, and the current ineffectiveness of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Metro Nashville Police Department and Metro Nashville Public Schools by January 2021? I think this is an important step in creating change that is needed for all students, and we hope you'll say yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. It's always a pleasure. As I spoke last time, I think I told everyone that I had the opportunity to be a school resource officer for 3 years, and it was one of the most rewarding times. I learned a lot and I enjoyed it. As you went through your 3 points, the 1.5 success rate on deterring school violence involving guns, sometimes you can't measure your success. And that seems to be a big theme in law enforcement. Deterrence is a measure of deterring violence. Sometimes that can't be measured. And I do agree, police are not there to try to install or enforce school policies. We're there to build a bridge, a community. I do believe there's a great need for great instructors, dear instructors. I'd like to see officers get involved with young people right away as a mentor, as a helper, but I am willing to have more conversations to see how we can better involve officers in the school system. Yes, I will commit to that.
Well, thank you, Chief LOKEY, but I'll clarify that is the best metric we could provide from a nonpartisan source as to the effectiveness. I think it's a good metric. And I think it's an issue that students across the board have been demanding in all of our interactions with them, whether it be interactions in part of NOAA, part of my organization, or from the Mayor's Youth Council. So I'm happy that you're agreeing to this. I hopefully this will have constructive change that we can accomplish as a group. And we'll probably be in contact with you through NOAA and the Criminal Justice Task Force to meet at some point before January, because things do need to change.
All right, Marcus, looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Chief LOKEY, and all of our speakers and panelists. Next, we'll watch a video from the Economic Equity and Jobs Task Force. And after that, Task Force members AC Snodgrass will ask questions to Councilperson Toombs.
NOAA is focused on 4 main issues: affordable housing, criminal justice, education, and economic equity and jobs. At the foundation of all of these issues is the fact that wages have not kept up with the cost of living and city services have not kept up with the growing population. We cannot have a city that works for all of us if we don't address these basic economic issues.
Over 2 years ago, NOAA was one of the first organizations that said we need to correct the way we do property taxes. We showed up at Metro Council asking for them to hold developers and downtown corporations responsible for paying their fair share. Unfortunately, we lost the chance to make that correction by 1 vote.
But did we give up?
No.
We persisted. NOAA, led by members of the Economic Equity and Jobs Task Force, kept pushing the issue. Working along with other community groups and elected officials, we held town halls and kitchen table conversations across the city.
We educated people with facts, not fear.
And this past spring, we finally corrected the tax rate so we can focus on building a strong city that can prioritize our people and our public services like our schools, our libraries, our community centers.
But there are people in high places that say we cannot do this. They want to divide us by our skin color, our religion, where we're from, or who we love, but we won't let them.
We can see our city skyline is changing, and that big commercial properties who are benefiting the most from the boom will now pay a correct property tax. This is the most equitable way our city has to solve the budget shortfall. We cannot be the city that represents our values if we aren't willing to invest in those priorities.
Even during a pandemic and a tornado, our city has continued to work. Now we need to stand together and say we will choose each other over the division. We will choose a shared vision for our city that works for all of us. The time is now.
Good afternoon. My name is Mrs. A.C. Achere Maliarta Snodgrass. I'm a support employee for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Over 2 years ago, NOAA proudly took a stand to say that property taxes needed to be adjusted in Davidson County. Commercial businesses are not paying their fair share of the need for our city services. As more and more people move into our city, there needs to be an increase in investment for schools, roads, parks, housing, and of course, healthcare. This correction was voted on and passed earlier this year. Now, out-of-state backers are trying to undermine their city's ability to set our own priorities by putting up a referendum vote that would repeal this. Councilperson Toombs, as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for Metro Council, what services would have to be cut if this referendum were to pass?
A significant amount of services would need to be cut. I mean, we have a $2.4 billion budget and $332 million of that budget is due to the property tax increase that was passed as part of the substitute budget back in June. So if you're taking out $332 million, you're left with roughly $2.1 billion. About $1 billion of that is schools. If you take out fire, police, the sheriff's office, you're looking at over $400 million. So you're left with about $700 million for the remaining about 50 departments. So public works is about 120 million, parks is 40, public transportation is about 90 million, about 90 million. And that's only because we got 20 million from the Fed. So it's really about 110. So there's really no way mathematically that you can't hit those larger departments with those larger budgets. So that's police, that's fire, that's sheriff's department, that's public works. A lot of folks think public works is just picking up trash, but that's our infrastructure. That's the majority of our traffic issues. So you're talking about crippling our city.
Thank you. Those are some really daunting numbers that we're talking about. Thank you to our task forces and to our city officials who've spoken so far. This is important work, right? But it is work. So let's all take a short stretch break, shake out your shoulders, do a couple of shoulder rolls, move your feet, take some deep cleansing breaths. The information that you just heard and the information we've been working on for years, it means a lot and we have lots to do. So we have a poll for you on your screens now. After you do that quick break is a short poll about how you're voting this year. Not who you're voting for, but how you will vote. So take a moment, pull up this survey, complete that survey for us. The responses are anonymous, and we're going to get those results just as soon as you take the poll. But please do take a moment to stretch. Very shortly from now, we're going to hear from the Reverend Dr. Anthony Sinkfield, who's a NOAA Executive Committee member and pastor at Payne Chapel, AME Church. Today, we congratulate Reverend Sinkfield, who's graduating and receiving his doctoral degree today from Union University with an emphasis on ethical and creative leadership. Though he can't be with us in person this afternoon, Reverend Dr. Sinkfield was determined to share an important message with us. Following his remarks, we'll hear from the NOAA Young Adult Caucus.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow brothers and sisters of Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. I am the Reverend Dr. W. Anthony Sinkfield, the pastor of Payne Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, and I'm also the finance chair for Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. I want to once again thank you for gathering on tonight and making this a very special, unique gathering of our organization through this virtual platform to speak truth to power in the city of Nashville, as well as to demand and challenge our city to move forward in equitable and just ways. Thank you for being here. Nashville Organized for Action and Hope carries as its mantra the reality of organizing people and organizing money. And your being here on tonight is a certain sign that organizing people has come to pass. But we also need your help right now to organize money. It is imperative that we have the resources behind our work in order to bring justice into this city in the ways that it needs to take place. That's why I'm here to make this appeal on tonight. The Bible clearly says that where your heart is where your treasure will be also. I am 100% certain that we all gathered here have a heart for justice, a heart for equity, a heart for fairness in housing, in jobs, in our criminal justice system, in education, which is why we're here. But to get these things done, we need you to give. It's important that you give and support our efforts. Many of you know we were not able to gather as we usually do for our fundraising efforts this spring because of COVID-19 and the pandemic effects that it had in bringing people together. We're also challenged right now to not be able to pull together our fall fundraiser, trying to work ways around this pandemic in order to make this come to pass. We need resources, financial, monetary resources to make that happen. I'm appealing to you tonight to give to NOAH, not just your efforts, not just your organizing skills, not just your willingness to march, not just your willingness to stand up for justice before the powers that are trying to restrict justice, but I'm asking you to give of yourself financially. We need that assistance to do this work and to do it well. NOAH has created some arms by which we might give. You will see on the screen those opportunities by which we can give. First of all, we can give electronically by going to noah10.org/donate. That's one of the ways that you can give, and we would to God that you would go online right now and make a very generous gift to this organization. But you may also send checks or money orders or any types of other paper instruments to NOAH by sending them the Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, P.O. Box 331144, Nashville, Tennessee, 37203. I'm telling you, Jesus was right that where our hearts are is where our treasure will be also. We really need you to sow your hearts financially into the work of NOAH. So I'm asking you to give generously, dig deep. Don't just get this wonderful information we've shared tonight. Don't get excited about what we can do to make a difference in this city without also knowing we need you. We really do, to support our work. Thank you so much. I know you're going to give generously. I know you're going to pour into this organization, and I know that together we're going to make the difference. And I'm asking you to not wait to give. Don't put it off to give. Remember our theme for tonight, the urgency of now. Give now, support now, and help us to get done the work that we have all assembled to get done. Thank you so much. I thank you in advance for your generosity and for NOAH's ability to go forward positively because of your blessing this work financially. Thank you.
So the NOAA Young Adult Caucus is in its first year, and we've had a great first year. We started by just trying to build engagement and get people involved in the NOAA Young Adult Caucus. So we did that through a series of events. Back in December, we had our first event. It was just focused on getting to know the issues in our city. We had 3 council members at kind of a house party, had some wine and cheese, and we were just kind of having a conversation about the issues that are important in Nashville. That kind of got people engaged, and we started having monthly meetings of a core group of about 15 to 20 people, and we started to continue to build more events to try to bring in more people. We had our second event in February focused on racial inequities in education. We had a lot more people attend that event. We got about 50 people and had a conversation with key leaders in the education community in Nashville about how we can address the racial inequities in our public school system. Then the pandemic happened and slowed us down a little bit, but it didn't stop us. We started to plan for our first virtual event. We had 50 people at that virtual event where we were talking about rebuilding Nashville in the aftermath of kind of these twin disasters we had just experienced, which were the March tornado and the ongoing pandemic, focused on 3 breakout sessions, affordable housing and how do we rebuild without displacing and avoiding gentrification, focused on an economic equity and jobs and approaching rebuilding efforts in an equitable way. And we also focused on building community and how do we stay engaged and connected during a time when we had to quarantine, social, and those social connections were feeling, more and more distant. So it's been a great first year for the NOAA Young Adult Caucus. We're just getting going, and we're just looking forward to continuing to build.
This has been an incredible year for the Young Adult Caucus, being new with everything going on with the pandemic. But we do have some next goals that we want to take going into 2021 and just latter this part of this year. The first thing is what all new groups need, right, is training. We want to get more training so we can be better at organizing and just learning more about how to build power. The second thing is building capacity. We want more recruitment. We want more young adults to be a part of the Young Adult Caucus, but also build more relationships with other community organizations that's going on and this has other similar capacity building and issues that we focus on as a Young Adult Caucus. The last thing we want to do is solidify one issue cut that we can build power around and focus as a Young Adult Caucus. That may be affordable housing, that may be criminal justice reform, that may be education. But those are the things we want to do going into the next year and some of the next steps we want to take. And hopefully you can be a part of that.
So the main thing you can do to help us spread the word and continue to build the NOAA Young Adult Caucus is just to spread the word to the young people in your organizations. There are lots of young people in all member organizations at NOAA, so we'll be getting y'all some information to help engage those people, tell them about the NOAA Young Adult Caucus and how they can get involved.
And even if you don't know anything about civic service, right, your community, but just want to get involved to learn, the NOAA Young Adult Caucus is a great place to start, and we need people like you to join us.
Thank you. We appreciate all of y'all joining in today, and we especially want to recognize the elected officials who took the time to listen in today. We believe this is all that have joined us. Assessor of Property, Vivian Wilhoit, Councilpersons Berkeley Allen, Emily Benedict, Tom Cash, Aaron Evans, Tanya Hancock, Angie Henderson, Councilwoman Johnston, Vice Mayor Jim Schulman, also council people at large, Bob Mendez and Zulfat Swara. We also have representatives from the school board. And of course I should say, we already heard from our budget chair, Council Lady Toombs, and also our school board chair, Christian Buggs. But we also have with us from the Board of Education, Emily Masters, Berthina Naba McKinney, Jeannie Pupa Walker, and Frida Player Peters. Thank you so much.
We want to emphasize that NOAA is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates or specific political parties. We want to work with any elected official that believes in racial and economic justice for all. For today's meeting, we sent invitations and followed up with phone calls to elected officials regardless of party affiliation.
We also reached out to state candidates that are running for office in our area. We received no answer from State Senator Steve Dickerson. Candidate Diane Canada opted not to attend today, citing her very different opinions from those of NOAA, and State Representative Bob Freeman had a previous engagement. We will be able to ask questions to candidate for State Senate Heidi Campbell and to State Representative Mike Stewart. We are thankful that you both took the time out of your Sunday afternoon to be here. Two of our task forces have a commitment question for you. Please respond to these queries with a straightforward yes or no. After the questioning, you will have an opportunity to speak to our virtual audience. Our Education Task Force member, Lynn Hoyt, has a question for each of you. After her, Monica Rainey from Affordable Housing also has a question.
Hello. NOAA has recognized that local school funding is impacted by state level decisions. NOAA is now prioritizing state level advocacy. Mayor Campbell, I'm going to ask you the first question. If elected, will you commit to join NOAA? I've just lost, excuse me. If elected, will you commit to joining NOAA and education advocates for a strategy session in January 2021, during which we will discuss securing funding for unaddressed mental health and social emotional needs of students in both rural and urban districts? Yes or no answer?
Yes, I will.
Great. Thank you. The same question for Representative Stewart. If elected, will you commit to joining NOAA and the education advocates for a strategy session in January 2021, during which we will discuss securing funding for unaddressed mental health, social and emotional needs of students in both rural and urban districts?
You're muted, Representative Stewart.
Yes, and I would say we have, as most of you know, a large amount of money in the rainy day fund currently. And so if the only thing that prevents us from addressing those priorities is the choice of some of the members of the legislature. So yes, I'd love to meet with you all.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My questions appear as 3 questions on the screen, but it's actually what I wanted to ask you both is, if you're elected, will you meet with NOAA in January to discuss strategies for reversing the inclusionary zoning ban and rededicating a portion of the real estate transfer tax to go to affordable housing as it was originally allocated? Senator Campbell, if you.
Yes, not senator yet, but
Yes.
working on it.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I will meet with you. And if do we have a moment to say something, or is this not the moment?
No, please.
Okay, so I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be with you, and grateful for what you do. You know, democracy is really hard work, and by holding elected leaders accountable, you are making a meaningful difference in Nashville. And as a municipal mayor, I am keenly aware of the issues involved with preemption, and you have my commitment that I'll meet with NOAA and I'll support inclusionary zoning. We're not only in a battle for the soul of our country right now, we're in a battle for the soul of our state and our city and our society. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned in our conversation today is the fact that our state is starving our cities. And like Representative Stewart said, I will work really hard to change that, because I think that's an issue that seems to be coming up on a lot of these things. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Representative Stewart, same question.
Yes, I opposed the bill. Obviously, that became, Public Chapter 685, which was a terrible initiative by the legislature. You know, Nashville's policy with respect to inclusionary zoning was just exactly what you want from local government. It very carefully tied incentives to creating affordable housing and people people who are supposed to provide the affordable housing were, of course, receiving zoning variances. So they were getting something of enormous value. And it was very reasonable for Nashville, particularly with our issues with respect to affordable housing, to expect them to pay back. So it was a very reasonable Nashville policy. And unfortunately, it fell prey to, I think, national political priorities. So yes, absolutely, it was a terrible law to pass, and I'm very committed to getting rid of it. Also, with respect to the real estate transfer tax, we should go back to that. I think information that we heard today demonstrates that that's not a small thing. We could actually address a lot of Nashville's affordable housing problems if we would go back to our previous policies with respect to the transfer tax. In terms of thousands of units. So that obviously needs to be a top priority. And obviously everybody, you've been on for a long time, so I'll just be brief. You know, so many people that have spoken or chatted on this, this program have been so involved in our community for so many years. And I just wanted to thank all of you who've done that. I actually just recently came upon an article about Joe Engel, who spoke earlier, and I think it was published in 1977. It was talking about him fighting the death penalty back in 1977. So that should, so this, many of you obviously have been engaged in making our community a better place for decades, and appreciate the hard work. And I hope that I can do my part in aligning with you in trying to address some of the many issues that you work on in the legislature, and in particular, the need to dramatically increase our, I see the bell, so I'll be quiet, but thank you very much for all the work you do.
Thank you very much, Mayor Campbell, and thank you also, Representative Stewart. We appreciate your willingness to work with us. I want to go back and thank MNPS District 9 Representative Abigail Tyler for joining us today, as well as Councilwoman Gloria Hauser and Councilwoman Jenny Welsh. Thank you all for being with us today. I'll turn it over to you, Arlene.
So Arlene, what is IVE?
Rutherford, IVE stands for Integrated Voter Engagement.
What makes IVE different than typical get out to vote campaigns?
Instead of focusing only on elections, IVE is about building permanent infrastructure.
Well, how does IVE do this?
Well, it does this by continuously organizing communities around issues that matter to them, so that when it comes time to vote, people are informed and engaged. This is how we gain power, not just win elections. So Rutherford, why don't we explain what IVE accomplished this year?
Well, Arlene, we initiated a voter challenge campaign to get 100% of NOAA member organizations to commit to vote in this year's election. This led to well over 1,000 voter commitments.
We used phone banking to reach out to the community at large as part of a Get Out to Vote campaign and make sure people had filled out their census form. We called well over 2,000 people.
And we organized efforts to increase turnout for this meeting today. This led to 757 registered attendants for this virtual event.
Today
this is how IVE builds power.
Today, NOAA demonstrated how we act on the fierce urgency of now. Our leaders called on our public officials and legislative candidates to hear the voice of the people and to act in our interest. Today, we developed powerful relationships with them through which we will advance our goals and hold them accountable. Now that we have accomplished these objectives, we, the IVE committee, invite you to take this energy and inspiration into the public sphere. You already participated in an earlier poll, and the results were amazing. 91% of you have already mailed in your ballots or voted early in person.
Now we're going to launch another poll. We heard what is at stake if the referendum is on the ballot. Issues such as funding for schools and mental health services, affordable housing, and public worker pay. With that in mind, Will you commit to voting on December 15th if there is a referendum on the proposed property tax cut? We're asking you to talk to people you know and love to explain why it is so important that they vote. How many people will you commit to speaking to? Would you be willing to join the NOAA IVE team to help us organize communities so voters are educated, informed, and engaged? Can we take a quick look at the poll? Okay, so I'm sure those results will be awesome and very inspiring for us. We'll be in touch with you if you are interested in working with the IVE team. Also, please look in the chat for information on our Voter Challenge celebration on Thursday, November the 5th at 5 p.m.
Thanks, Rutherford and Arlene. Awesome job. And everyone, thank you all for being with us today. There's much work to be done in our city, and it will happen as we join together to implement policies that benefit all Nashvillians. We'll be following up with you as engaged citizens as the election looms in the next weeks and as future initiatives are on the ballot. We must have the fierce urgency of now.
We would like to draw your attention to the chat box where we have shared with you a copy of the Nashville Voters Guide. This was put together by our friends at the Equity Alliance. We are grateful for their work and their willingness to share the guide with NOAA today. Reverend Herbert Lester.
Since I am Herbert Lester, I serve Clark Memorial United Methodist Church, and I'm chair of NOAA's Personnel Committee. In August 1963, at the March on Washington, Martin Luther King Jr. pointed out, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is the time for vigorous action. This is no time for inaction. This is why we are here. This is why we dare not procrastinate. We're in the middle of the fierce urgency of the now. We can't wait for schools that work when parents don't have jobs. We can't wait for affordable housing when first responders and teachers and many hourly wage workers are forced to live in surrounding counties because everything has gone up in this county but wages. We can't wait for the police to remember that they are public servants paid by the same public they often abuse and misuse as they militarize themselves for a war on the folk who help to pay them. It's late, but it's not too late. The hour, however, is fast approaching. We must act. And in our acting, we must remember, as Frederick Douglass so aptly observed, power never concedes anything without a demand. As NOAA, we've learned that organized people and organized money working together create capacity. The capacity to act, which is all that power is, and power is so good, everybody ought to have some. We have power. We have the power of our votes, the power of our organizing, the power of the people, many of whom are the least, the last, the lost, and the left out. Many of these are our neighbors who work from can't see morning till can't see night and still can't see how to make ends meet, but they can and will vote. Now is the time to act. Now is the time to keep building our capacity. Now is the time to use our power. Henry David Thoreau once said, some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask why not. Why not change the pipeline to prison in our schools with social emotional learning? Why not use inclusionary zoning and real estate transfer taxes to build affordable housing? Why not demilitarize the police and use other professionals in situations where law enforcement is not needed? In the fierce urgency of this moment, why not smooth out the rough places of income inequality with a livable wage? Why not straighten out the crooked places of political corruption? Why not lift up the valley of equal educational opportunity? Why not level the mountains of gender inequality, homophobia, xenophobia, and racial discrimination? How long, you ask? How long? And I said, not long, until justice runs down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. How long? You can go from this place ready to build, to vote, to hold those who elect accountable. How long? We can challenge the status quo. We can innovate, initiate, instigate, train, and own our power and our vision. How long? We can never give up. How long? Not long, just 9 days until election day. How long? Not long. Make your way to the polls and vote. How long? Shalom and go vote.
Thank you so much for that amazing word, Reverend Lester. We will have a closing prayer by Reverend Lissa Smith with Christ Church Cathedral. Thank you so much.
I send you out in the words of St. Francis. May you be blessed with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships so that you may live deep within your heart. May you be blessed with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people and the land and resources so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace for all. May you be blessed with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, starvation, and war, so that you may reach out your hands to comfort and turn pain to joy. May you be blessed with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done. Amen.
Amen.
Go in peace to love and serve your community, your friends, your neighbors, and your God.
Thank you and good evening.